Steve Sims, welcome to the Comfort, Peace, and Freedom podcast. Appreciate you being here today.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So you've got an incredibly cool story. You know, so many people get wrapped up in trying to do things and trying to figure out what they want to do with their lives, and they're always stuck in this, man, what if I could only do that, and if I could only do this. Let's just get a little bit of background. So you have an interesting story. You say you went from bricklayer to stockbroker to bouncer. How did that work?
Like all entrepreneurs, we're aggravated and we want to find out where we fit. So I didn't want to be a bricklayer because I didn't want to be cut up and wet every single day. I was in East London at the time. So I tried getting office jobs, and all of the people in the 80s that were making money were stockbrokers. And so I applied for a job for a stockbroker. Funny enough, I applied for the job in Hong Kong, and they were doing a mass recruitment campaign, and they ended up flying 60 of us over to Hong Kong. So I managed to just kind of get through into the net. And I landed on the Saturday, got drunk with them on the Saturday night, got drunk with them on the Sunday, went to orientation on the Monday, and I was fired on the Tuesday. So it was the shortest career ever, but I was for 24 hours a trainee stockbroker. And of course I had no job. So I tried finding a job. I'm now in a completely different country, but because I'm big and ugly, God saw fit to stick me on the door of a nightclub and tell you no. So I became a doorman. But there's something funny about entrepreneurs. And there's a friend of mine, he's no longer with us, but he'll never be gone, Dr. Sean Stevenson. And he always used to say, was this done for me or was this done to me? Mm-hmm. And so everything I've always loved that. So even before I knew him, even before we were friends, even before I heard him say that, somewhere in my head, I would always search for that silver lining. Okay, I'm in the doghouse now. I'm in the crap, or I'm down in the pits. But how can I make this good? You know, maybe I'm in the pits. Maybe I'll find a diamond. It was always that kind of try to find the benefit in the crap. And as a doorman, funny enough, I actually got to see firsthand human interaction. Now we think we know about humans, but when you actually sat there as the gatekeeper, you actually get to see, the guys that are just looking for a fight, the girls that are looking to start fights. Girls were more often the troublemakers than the guys. The girls that are out celebrating a party, the guys that are out celebrating a contract win, whatever it is, a birthday. And I used to be able to see it. And I also used to be able to see those that had money and how they treated each other and how they gravitated towards other people that had money, and those people that pretended they had it, and how they actually walk, talk, and attracted those with no money as well. So I actually ended up getting this MBA in human psychology from the door of a pretty shitty Hong Kong nightclub. And it just spurred me on to go, well, okay, let me get some more answers. And that's where the rest of the story goes.
Well, I have to tell you, I'm so, like, I can't wait to hear the answer to what got you fired in 24 hours from the stockbroker job. But we don't have to go there if you don't want to.
I wasn't qualified. That was the bottom line. When they actually started going through all the resumes during the day, they were all there in orientation. They realized that I had no certification. I had no qualifications. They don't know how I'd made it through. And they said, we got to let you go, don't you? And I was like, yeah, all right. And that was it. So somehow I had got through, and that was it. So I hadn't done anything wrong. They just realized that they should never have taken me over the countries.
I heard the other day that someone walked in an interview, and this is in this day and age, and he sat down in front of the guy, and the guy was interviewing and said, okay, so I want you to forget everything you learned about in college, because we're going to teach you what we want to teach you here. And the kid that was being interviewed said, well, that's good, because I didn't go to college. And the guy answered back to him, well, then you're not qualified for this job. Right. I mean, that's how insane it's getting with the qualifications of that. So do you remember when and where, or how old maybe you were when you asked that first, like, I can't believe I'm about to ask this question. I can't believe I'm about to see if I can pull this off. Do you remember like your first huge ask in trying to get something big done for one of your clients?
So that question can be dissected. So I'm going to answer it. I'm going to answer part of that question, and then I'm going to answer part two. Your first part of the question was, do you remember that first question? And I'm going to answer that, the first question that changed me, the first question that literally ripped everything off me and changed my trajectory by 180 degrees, 90 degrees, whatever diameter you want to put on it. But I was on the building site and I went up on the scaffolding, and next to me on the scaffolding was my dad. Next to him was his brother, my uncle, his sons, my cousins. And then next to him, nearly 80 years old, my granddad. And my granddad was a mammoth Irish lad. He was a really big, tree of a guy. But he was nearly 80 years old, and it's raining and he's getting cut up and he's having trouble getting up and down the ladder. And I remember looking at him, and I was like 16, 17 years old at the time. And at tea break time, and all the rain's hitting the caravan and everything, and it's smelling of a bunch of wet bricklayers inside this caravan as we're drinking our tea and trying to warm up. I squeezed through everyone to get to him, and I said to him, "Granddad, did you ever think you'd be doing this when you were this old?" Now, it's the kind of question that should have got a smack in the mouth. It was very rude, very aggressive. Sure, shit, he hadn't planned. He didn't want to be there. But he didn't even look at me and answered, "If you don't quit today, you'll be me tomorrow."
Wow.
And I quit that day. I realized I couldn't be my granddad. And my granddad died shortly after that. So I never ever got the chance to tell him what a pivotal moment that was. But I swear I'll meet him up in the pearly gates and we'll be sharing an old fashioned and laughing about it. But that was the first thing that changed. So that was the first question I dared to ask, that I then accepted the answer and did something with it. The next question you asked me was the big question I asked for, the big, ridiculous, stupendous thing that I never thought I'd pull off. What was that first question? And the answer is I haven't asked it yet.
Oh,
because
wow.
if you build up so much pressure on that question, you never get, 9 times out of 10, you'll go, "Oh my God, I won't do it." I would always just go and ask. And I've actually done speeches on this. I would literally go, "Oh, you want to play with Elton John? All right, so how have I got to get you a piano lesson with Elton John? Oh, you want to actually play drums with Guns N' Roses? All right, well, we know who the drummer is. How do I get hold of them?" And social media and the internet is absolutely brilliant now. But there's everyone out there going, "Oh my God, I wouldn't know how to get hold of them." Yeah, you do. It's dead easy, but will you? Now, the thing about me, and my wife actually said this, she calls me her ignorant 5-year-old. Still not quite sure if that's a compliment, but the way she puts it is that I'm ignorant to the fear, the laughter, the humiliation, the attempt. I just go forward with, "Okay, I want to play drums with you. How can we make this happen?" And there's just this ignorance that doesn't allow you to listen to all the other white noise and getting pulled back by all the other crabs. I think if you put that question and you layer on all of that big pressure that you did, you will be too terrified to ask. But if you don't have that pressure and you just ask, you'll be amazed at what you can pull off.
So how do you describe for someone listening what you do now? Because in order for me to ask you about how you do it, how do you describe? Someone says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you describe that?
All right. So for 25 years, I was the most connected guy on the planet that you'd never heard of. I worked for billionaires. I had clients who want to get married in the Vatican by the Pope, drive a Formula One car. I was the Make-A-Wish Foundation for people with really big checkbooks. I did that for 25 years. And I've always said it's not the business I was in. The business I was in was to be able to get a 2-hour meeting with a billionaire or someone that owns something like a country and ask them questions. Basically, if podcasts had existed back in the late 90s, I don't think I'd ever have launched my business. Could I be doing what you're doing now? Just contact people and get the answers I want to help me. So if it meant that, hey, for me to get a 2-hour meeting with you, and you own one of the largest banks in Russia, and I get to talk to you about investments and business and trust and crime and all of these things, for me to be able to ask you those questions, "Oh, you need to go to Elton John's party? Fine, let me handle that because that's what I want." So I was never focused on this. I was focused on the meeting. I did that for 25 years. Forbes called me the real life Wizard of Oz. I got loads of, notoriety near the end of it as I came out of doing this. I launched my first book, Blue Fishing, thinking no one's going to buy it because it was full of simple tactics that I thought people are going to read and they're going to want their money back. Because it was just very simple. But I realized that people don't like simple. They don't trust simple. They'd rather spend 10 grand to have you solve that problem rather than them do it themselves. And that kind of mentality, kind of like astounded me. And the book came out, it became bestseller, translated into, I think, 9 languages or something. It still is today doing incredibly well. And so then I started teaching, coaching. I run a marketing company called Sims.media, and I have my own personal brand, Steve D. Sims. And I literally teach, train, and speak all over the planet to try and get people out of the way of themselves, to unveil who they really are, get rid of all the confusion that they've created in a very, very noisy, judgmental world. And of course, recently we went through COVID, and during the worst time of us to be able to interact with each other, we turned on each other and started inventing things like the cancel culture and the gotcha society. And we all became woke to something you said inappropriate in 1984. I'm sure I was inappropriate yesterday, but I just don't like the economy that we're in, that we're actually looking for people to kill that career. And there's been a lot of careers that have been killed where they've been innocent, but they've been judged guilty in the court of public opinion. So during COVID, I actually wrote Go for Stupid, the art of achieving ridiculous goals, to try and get people to think and act and do different.
Well, that's the thing I want to get to, because, I think Go for Stupid. First off, love the title. I'm going to ask you how you came to that title in a second, because when I wrote my book called Blue Collar Cash, and it was a process, and going through the titles, I remember there was lots of input and all that. But before you got to this book, though, you recognized that all you had to do was ask. And I guess just so people understand what you were capable of pulling off, can you talk about the statue of David dinner, just so people understand what you were able to do, and how, sometimes they say the prettiest girl never gets a date because all the guys are afraid to ask her out, right?
Yep.
And it's a shame. But can you just throw a little bit about it, because that just blew I've got your book right here, Go for Stupid, and I got to tell you, it's fantastic. Everyone should read it. It's hilarious. It's fantastic. I can hear you speaking when I read the book, which is really cool. But go ahead and throw about a little bit out there about the David story.
So a client contacted me, said to me, I was actually working in Italy at the time, and I always tell my clients where I am. And he contacted me and he said, look, I'm going to be in Florence on Wednesday. This was Sunday. And I need to go out and have dinner with my my fiance, the mother-in-law and father-in-law, and we got a friend in town. So, can you set up a really cool dining experience that shows everyone how powerful and connected I am? And that was the ask. So I thought, well, sure, I can get the top-rated restaurant in Florence and get the chef to come out and maybe welcome you back. And I could do all of that shit, but how can I really make it ridiculous? How can I make that goal just utterly unbelievable? So we always start with the moonshot, fail, and grab some stars on the way down. But every now and then we don't fail. And so I went for the wildest, craziest ask I could. And I thought to myself, if you're going to have a meal in France, okay, in Paris, where would you have to have that meal that it could not be replicated and would be unmistakably Parisian than anywhere else in the world? The Eiffel Tower. If you're in New York, Statue of Liberty. If you're in England, maybe Buckingham Palace. There's always those iconic places that can't be replicated anywhere else. So in Florence, the Accademia della Galleria is the famous museum that houses Michelangelo's David, the most
Yeah, I've been
famous
there.
statue.
Awesome.
It's incredible, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, it's totally awesome.
It's breathtaking.
Until you
And
see it, until you walk up and look at it, you just can't even imagine how cool it is. Yeah.
oh no, you can't. You can't. For anyone out there thinking, it's a statue, go.
Right.
Just go.
Just go.
And so I thought to myself, well, this is a ridiculous, stupid idea. Let's shut the whole museum down. Let's do a Thomas Crown affair kind of thing. Shut the museum down, set up a table of 6 at the feet of Michelangelo's David, and they can have a phenomenal meal while looking at the most iconic statue in the world. And so I tried to pull this off by asking. And again, sometimes you go, but my reputation and my brand precedes me quite a lot now. They said yes. And I was like, shit, I don't have to design a plan B, because I very rarely go, because it's like most people will jump out of a plane with a parachute. That's their plan B. And that's the sensible thing. But for me, I'll often go in with just a plan A. There's no plan B. I'll work out the plan B if that goes wrong. But all my energy is on that plan A. And if you've got that back to a wall kind of feeling that I've got no plan B, you work your plan A really good. So I asked, I got, and it was like 10 o'clock in the morning on a Monday morning, and this meal was going to kick off at 9 p.m. They had connections with the chef, so I didn't have to worry about that. They knew an event planner that could set up the table, so I didn't have to worry about that. A friend of theirs on the board had a string quartet. Would you like music? Thank you very much. There's the string quartet. So by 12 o'clock Monday, it was done. And I was like, shit. And here's where it gets funny. We're weird as entrepreneurs, aren't we?
Oh, for sure.
The
Absolutely.
second everything is working perfectly, we find a way to fuck it up. We just do.
Right.
And I'm sitting there, and I think it must have been 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm sitting there in the main Republic Square, and I'm drinking my espresso. And I thought, what can I, how can I take this further? I've already got it. So how can I make it better? I've got, 48 hours.
Right.
What ridiculous. So I thought to myself, if you're going to receive music in the most iconic location in Florence, underneath the most iconic statue in the planet, then who's the most iconic Italian singer? Andrea Bocelli.
No question.
No question. But could I get him? So I phoned around. I didn't know who he was, but I knew who he was, but I didn't know him. So I didn't know how to get hold of him. But I spent probably about an hour and a half on the internet and stuff like that, phoning up a few people. Do you know? No, I don't. How can I get hold of? Don't know. And I went through all of that. And then I actually stumbled upon two numbers. One, a friend of mine that knew the manager, and another friend of mine that knew the agent. So I contacted the agent. I said, I've got this ridiculous idea. I'd love Andrea Bocelli to turn up to my dinner party on Wednesday night, serenade us while we eat our pasta, and then bugger off. And of course, the agent turned around and said, yeah, that sounds great. I'll call you back. And of course, he didn't even take my phone number down.
Sure.
So I knew that was dead. But my friend that knew the manager, I rode in on that credibility. So all of a sudden they were like, tell us about the event. What are you trying to do? Well, I'm trying to do this. And of course, I would be more than happy to support any charity you wish us to support. And so we got involved in that. We ended up making a beautiful donation to that charity. But at 9 o'clock at night, my clients are eating their meal. They start the main course of the pasta. I walk out into my client, and I said to my client, excuse me for interrupting, but I've managed to find a local entertainer that is really good at singing. Would you mind if I brought them in and serenaded you while you continued with the meal? So my client's like, yes, that'd be great, Steve. That'd be great. Then I walked out, came back in arm in arm with Andrea Bocelli himself. And the funny thing is, and you've been there, so you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a marble floor with marble statues and marble surrounds.
Yep. Columns. Yep.
Yep. One of the girls on the table dropped her knife. She was so in awe that it was Andrea Bocelli that came out. She dropped her cutlery. That thing echoed for what seemed to be about half an hour. It was hysterical, but that's what I did. My clients ended up having dinner at the feet of Michelangelo's David and had Andrea Bocelli serenade him at about 9:30 at night.
You know, I was very fortunate. And by the way, I mean, this is what I'm trying to get out into the podcast is if you can see it, and if you're willing to ask it, and if you're willing to take that very first step, that you can do just about anything. I was able to see Andrea Bocelli in the backyard of his home in Florida.
Oh, beautiful.
He had a party for around 50 people. And I got to tell you, when the guy walks out, it's like, he's like from another earth. He is just so amazing. And he sounds just so good. So for you to have that in that setting had to be just off the map, as they say.
It was ridiculous. He was actually, there was one funny little moment with, there's a little pedestal that surrounds the back of David that goes, so you can go around or just sit there and look at it.
Right.
And there was me, Andrea Bocelli, and Veronica Bocelli sitting there at the time while his son was messing around with the piano to find out the best place for the piano that wouldn't have too much reverb. It was terrible acoustics. And while we were sat there, Andrea suddenly started warbling up and kind of like, you know, testing his chords and stuff. And he was sat there going, whoa, whoa, whoa. And as he was doing that, I just suddenly went, and I did this. I mimicked him. And he said something to Veronica in Italian. And she looked at me and she said, what are you doing? And I said, you know, I'm singing a duet. When is the next time I'm ever going to be able to sing a duet with Andrea Bocelli at the feet of Michelangelo's David? I didn't want to ask, so I just took that moment. And as she spoke to him, he laughed, looked in my direction, and just went, stop. That was it. But hey, I sang a duet with Andrea Bocelli.
You absolutely did.
There you go.
So when someone asks you, okay, I want you to, you know, take me, I don't know, in a submarine to the Titanic or whatever, how do you begin? Like, what's the first thing you do? Okay, how the hell am I going to pull this off? Like, what's the first thing you do?
Well, you don't phone a zoo, you know, and I know that sounds a really stupid thing to say, but most people sit there and they just like go, oh, I don't know who to call. Well, you know who not to call. Right. So 9 times out of 10, knowing what not to do, including panic, is the first step. Okay. Okay. So you want to go down to the Titanic. Who do I know that's involved in any way, shape, or form in ocean? Okay. Military, oceanic research, you know, just anything like that. The local aquarium, you know, those are great ways to actually go first to try and step it down. Someone once said to me, no one's ever walked onto a roof. They climb up a ladder. You may have to make 30 phone calls to get the one person. When I did the Andrea Bocelli, I ended up with 2 people that could help me. One gave me the agent, complete waste of time. He never did call me back. But the other one gave me the actual manager. So you don't know how many phone calls you're going to need to make. Of course, the better you get, the less phone calls you need to make. But in the early stages, knowing what not to do can be your greatest advantage. And there is nothing better than momentum. Make the first phone call. You're basically, it's like when anyone gets into a boxing ring or anyone that's going to, I don't know, run a marathon or anything. What do? You don't wake up in the morning and then go to the start line, do you? You stretch out, you relax, you kind of like get yourself all limbered up, get yourself all what you prepare. Those phone calls that you're making to the local aquarium and any kind of oceanic research, those are you limbering up. Those are you just testing the waters. You will be surprised if someone says, well, actually, we don't do that. But you know, we know someone, because now what you're doing is you're getting into those people's sandpits.
Yes.
And as soon as you can get into the sandpit, someone knows someone who knows someone. Bingo, there you go. Got it answered.
I wrote a whole chapter in my book about, I've never built a skyscraper before, but if I did, what would be the first thing I would do? Right. And the first thing you do is you look for a piece of land. I never built a skyscraper before, but if I did, I'd probably have to hire an architect. And by the time you ask that question 10 or 15 times, you've built the skyscraper already. So yeah, I mean,
your roadmap.
It's a beautiful process. So what led you to the book, Go for Stupid. And I, first off, I love the cover, how you tear off what should be a normal cover and the word stupid's underlined there. So why the name Go for Stupid?
So the good thing is that name is about 18 years old. So let me play a game with you. If you want to do something that's out of your reach, let me say to you that, hey, what we're going to do here, Ken, we're going to go for the impossible. Let's smash through the impossible. Let's make the impossible possible. Impossible stands for I'm possible. Now, when you start talking about impossible, you grit. You get all tensed up. I'm going to break through the impossible. And you get very, very restrictive, don't you? And you get all kind of like fired up, but you're restricted and fierce. But if I say to you, hey, Ken, I love that idea. How can we make that idea stupid? The first thing that happens is you grin.
Sure.
I'm gonna make this goal stupid. I'm gonna make this goal. Now, this could be, like you said, the supermodel doesn't get a dance at the prom because everyone's scared. But hey, you want to be stupid? I'm going for that supermodel. You're the only one. Right. She's probably so bored and no one to dance with her. I'll dance with you. You won. So going for stupid unlocks that 5-year-old curiosity in you. You become a child. You gamify it. So when people would come to us, they'd be like, hey, I want to have a meal in Florence. We'd go, how can we make this stupid? Oh, I like Taylor Swift. I want 2 tickets to Taylor Swift. Who cares? You can get that on Ticketmaster sometimes. How can I make this stupid? Oh, you like Guns N' Roses? Right. What stupid thing can I create to satisfy your lust and love for Guns N' Roses? So we used to have this saying, and we'd all sit around the table at my office when I held the concierge firm, and we'd go, okay, we've got these requests. How can we make this one stupid? Someone wants a cruise in Egypt. Can we lock them in the pyramids for the night? Oh, by the way, someone's a big fan of James Bond. Can we actually turn them into James Bond? Can we do this? We would look for stupid goals, and that stuck with us. And then when I started doing my mentorship, my entrepreneur teaching and training, I would take people and they'd be like, yeah, I want to make $500,000 a year. Great, let's go for 5 mil.
Right.
I can't make 5 mil. You probably won't, but you'll fail at 2.5.
Yeah.
So would you like to fail at 2.5, or would you like to achieve $500,000? So there was always this mentality of how stupid can we make this? And then when COVID came across, and I didn't want, you've written a book, so you know what it's like. It's consuming.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I did blue fishing. It got released on Simon & Schuster. So I had one of the largest publishing houses in the planet backing it. And it was like a therapy session by the planet just staring at me. And I was like, oh my God, I am there. And I literally used to say to my wife and my family, I'm a one and done. That book's out. I'm never doing another book ever.
Right.
Ever.
Right.
Not doing another. And then COVID came across, and I loved COVID. I apologize for anyone that had any pain during COVID. I loved it. I didn't have to fly. I didn't have to travel. And I'm with my family, who I actually like. We all love our family, but I like mine. And I was having a glorious time. And I saw a report that was released by the BBC shortly after COVID that said during the 2 years of COVID, went on for a little bit longer than that, but during the 2 years of COVID, over 5 million first-time millionaires were registered. It was the greatest explosion of new millionaires in any 2-year period in our history.
Wow.
But it was also deemed as the worst time of our history. Now, again, this was an example of, was this done to me or was it done for me? And I used to really hate it when I'd see people go on Facebook going, right, I've binge watched The Sopranos and Breaking Bad. What else can I binge watch and waste my life with?
Right.
And I'm like, are you kidding? What's the one thing we can't get with, no matter how much money we got? Time. It was like being given a 9-day week. I had so much time. I launched a company. I folded companies because I just thought, I don't like them anymore. So I folded companies. I revamped websites. I did other people's. We launched a media company. So it just exploded. But I still got irritated the way that so many people were now starting to go from the kind of complaining to the attacking. And that's when we built the toxic society, the cancel culture. So I started doing blogs, and I'm not the most subtle on social. So I started blasting on social, moaning about people and why are we doing this? And why are we acting like crabs? And everyone hates it, but why are you part of the problem and not the solution? So someone said to me, you should write a book. And then second year of COVID, I went, I need to. I don't want to because I hate the experience, but I need to. And we were talking about this earlier before we started recording. At our age, we get to do what we want to do. And that's experience, that's knowledge, that's understanding of us and what we like and what we want to share the time on. But I got kids, and I just thought, why are we doing? I have to say something. So I had to try and be part of the solution. So I released a book to try and get people to achieve more, to go for more importantly, to ask more. And I know some pretty powerful people. So you've got the book there. I've been able to tell stories about Elon Musk, Elton John, Walt Disney. And I was able to put all these things in there to show that the people that we admire, the people that we revere, because, me and you, we're both, we're both over 21. And when we were kids.
Yeah, just a bit.
Just a bit. We wanted to be a footballer. We wanted to be a rock star. We wanted to be an actor. You ask kids today, they want to be an entrepreneur. They want to be Jeff Bezos. They want to be Mark Zuckerberg. They want to be Elon Musk. These entrepreneurs are the rock stars of today. But every single one of those frequently gets annihilated in the public and laughed at. We revere them. We want to be them. But how many times do we criticize and laugh at them? And I just thought that's got to change. Wouldn't it be nice to actually sit around with a group of people and to come up with ridiculous goals and then have everyone actually help us achieve those things?
Absolutely. As a group, for sure.
Rather than sitting around a table in a bar with everyone scoffing at you going, Ken, you can't do that. You're an idiot. What do you know? Elon Musk knew nothing about space travel, automotive, solar panels, even banking. He knows nothing about Twitter. Look at that. So
yeah, right.
The whole point is we laugh at people too much. I want people out there to actually look at that as a challenge rather than as a restriction.
You talk about in the book, and again, we're talking about the book Go for Stupid. You talk a lot about risk, and you tie risk to a lot of things. And one of the things you do tie risk to is the fear of being laughed at. Okay. And how to overcome those types of things. I've heard once that laughter, to be able to create laughter in others, is a form of genius, because you're taking a lot of risk in doing that. You're taking the risk in saying something or doing something or acting a certain way that you think will create some positive energy in the room, create some laughter, but you're also taking a risk at the same time. And, there's a lot of good stuff out there on risk, there's a really good, a good quote by William Arthur Ward: laugh risks appearing the fool. To try is to risk failure. To hope is to risk pain. To put your ideas and dreams before a whole crowd of people is to risk their loss. Were you always a risk taker, or did you just not give a damn? Or how did that come about?
I wasn't a risk taker. In fact, I'm quite a boring person. And I really calculate risk. But to risk something, you first got to have something to risk. Sure. As a bricklayer from London, what was I risking? All of my friends were broke. I was broke. Did I have a future? No. Had I gone to college? No. Did I have an education, a pedigree, connections, relationship? No. I had nothing. So it wasn't a risk. And then as I started going out to try and get those nuggets to get that education, it wasn't a risk if I'm speaking to a guy that's one of the top investment bankers for a major corporation. You know, I wasn't risking anything by speaking to Jay Abraham, Jim Quick, Ari Melzel, Tony Robbins on how to become a better entrepreneur. I wasn't risking anything. My stupidity would have been to have had that 2-hour conversation and then done nothing with it. Now,
Yeah.
we actually move at the moment with a lot of fear, okay? And the thing about fear is it stops us. With me, it propels me. I've reframed it. A friend of mine once said to me, the definition of hell is to meet the man or woman that you could have been. Am I willing
Wow.
to risk?
I love that. That's
Oh,
awesome.
it's beautiful. Yeah. Am I willing to risk staying here? Now, I live up in the hills just outside of Los Angeles. I'm just down by the beach. I've got a collection of motorcycles. I've got gas in the tank. I've got bourbon in the cupboard. I'm happy. Okay. But do I want to be the same person today as I am in a year's time? No. I want to have challenging conversations. I want to try things and I want to fail. I want to fall over and learn. That's how you grow. I want to constantly live life. The risk, as far as I'm concerned, isn't in trying, it's in standing still.
Love it. That's fantastic. And again, that leads me to the next thing, because there's a page 38 of your book. You have the 7-38-55 rule.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a secret to getting things done. I'd love it if you could share that for people, because there's so many people out there that are like, someday I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And the first thing I say to them is, you realize there's no such thing as someday. That day will never come. Mm-hmm. Okay. Today you could become an entrepreneur, but not someday. So can you throw that out a little bit about the 7-38-55 rule?
I really pray you're not going to ask me to tell you the philosopher, the lecturer that actually came up with it, because I've never been able to pronounce his name very well.
Good. No problem.
But it was Chris Voss from Never Split the Difference actually was one of the guys responsible for getting it a lot more popularity as well recently within his book. But the 7-38-55 rule is a beautiful way on how we actually communicate. And 55% of how we communicate is visual. You know, my hands up in the air, my excitement, my eyelids, my intensity, my passion. You want to see that? Look at Mussolini and Hitler, how they used to command the ranks.
Oh, yeah.
These guys were incredible teachers and speakers and knew about this, okay? And that was 55% of the communication is in the visual deliverability. 38% of the deliverable is the tonality, the excitement, the variation of your voice. Again, you can go back to Hitler and Mussolini, and they would do this, we do this, and we will rejoice. They would escalate. Our politicians do this all the time. But it was the tonality. So it was the body language married with the tonality gets you really excited, with only 7% actually focusing on the content. And this is like when you go to a seminar and a really good speaker will come on stage and they will motivate you and they will challenge you and they will get you cheering and dancing, and you'll be sitting in your seat. You'll be like, oh, that's absolutely fantastic. And then they will leave the stage and you can turn around to them and go, right, Billy, what is the one thing that you're going to action from that conversation? What is the one thing you got from it? And they'll sit there and they'll go, I don't know, but I'm excited. Right. So you've got to focus on the fact that in today's world of communication, it's the deliverability on a visual, it's the tonality, and then it's the content. If you've got great content, but you don't know how to deliver your message, it won't saturate, won't penetrate, and it won't be consumed.
So I like to think of the example of the gentleman from Apple Computer. Remember, it was one of the founders. He used to run back and forth on the stage and just go absolutely crazy. And he would talk to his, or maybe it was Microsoft. I don't remember what it was. It was one of those two companies, but he would literally go back and forth on the stage and just get people so crazed up. But again, you were watching and feeling and intaking all of that energy versus exactly what words he was using at the time. And I think
Well,
That's
that's
hugely
done.
important
If you want
because
to
there's
see,
risk in that. There's a lot of risk in getting out on that stage and saying, I believe in this idea and therefore I'm freaking going for it. And you can see that in someone's face when you're trying to sell an idea to somebody else.
but that's why today in product launches, in comedy shows, you'll always see it in a comedy show, even in a concert, there's always the warm-up act. Those are the ones that, again, get you going. You ever go to a comedy show? You ever go? I went to the product launch of a car. A client wanted to see it, so I took him along a while back, and there was a warm-up act, and they were like, "Are you ready? Are you going to see?" So again, that will getting you hyped, ready to receive the content. Okay, because they know. And here's another thing: if you just give me content, you should do this. It's going to make you rich. I'm going to make you rich in 35 days. If you just give me
Right.
$1, I'll make you. You're already bored. I said to you that I'm going to make you rich with just $1. You don't care. So the bottom line of it is today, you do need that 738-55 rule to be able to make sure that you are communicating articulately and accurately to be able to penetrate the other person you're speaking to.
So let's take that a step further then, because you talk about how you want to make $500,000, try to make 5 million, fail at 50% of it. I absolutely love that. To somebody that is going out today, because as you said, the guy said, I want to make 500,000. He could have said, I want to make 500,000. You probably would have said, well, let's make 20 and fail at 10. So, yeah. But the point is how do we know? How does somebody know that they're placing limits on themselves? I mean, it's a risk to jump out and take a huge goal like that. But how do you know how does someone know that they're putting a limit on themselves? Because you're your own worst enemy at that point.
Let's go back to that marathon we spoke about where you need to limber up and warm up. You can't sell your house, go over to Vegas and put it all on black and then be pissed off because it landed on red.
Right.
That's a stupid risk. So what you've got to do is you've got to get those muscles limbered up. Okay. Now I'm not talking about gambling, but I am talking about opening up opportunity. And here's a weird thing. Have you ever been at a car park, at a car dealership, and there's been a car there and it's a weird color? Maybe it's a yellow, a green, a blue, it's just a weird color. And then when you're driving home, what's the only car color you can see on the road?
Yes, for sure.
It's that color, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because your mind has been opened up to that color. When you train your mind to be open to opportunity, what's the only thing you can see? Opportunity. So these are the ways that I do it. And I talk about it in the book as well. Go onto a radio station you've never heard of before, maybe even in a different country. We've all got these online radio stations, MyTuner or whatever those kind of things are. I think mine is MyTuner, the one, my favorite. And pick a different country, pick one of our stations and listen to it for 30 minutes. And you will listen to music that maybe you don't even understand what they're saying. But at the end of it, you'll have been like, well, I don't like Polish rap, But here's the thing. You now know, but your mind goes, he's trying to consume different stuff now. And then when you go out at night and you have a meal, this is very important. When you get to the appetizers, don't pick the usual appetizers. Pick one that you can't even pronounce. Pick one that you have no idea what it is for $5. Risk $5. Buy it. You may find that that is the best tasting thing you never would have picked. Or you may find that that's the most disgusting thing. You can't believe you put it in your mouth. But now you're educated on it. But again, your brain goes, whoa, hang on a minute. We're trying different things. We've got to get prepared for that. And when you're driving home and yours is the next second turning on the left, take the first turning on your right and go down a street you've never been down before. And your mind goes, whoa, we're doing things differently now. We've got to get prepared. You train yourself to accept opportunity. And that's why I think COVID was so special, because it gave us opportunities. My dad, Irish lad, not the sharpest tool in the shed, but he always said the richest guy on a rainy day is the guy selling the umbrella. I remember there was a driveway off of the 101 here in Los Angeles. And every time I come off that slip road, right at the bottom, there's a Mexican family there. Okay. And they're always selling, Valentine's teddy bears on Valentine's Day and flowers. And they're always selling badges. And if there's a Lakers game going on, it's Lakers flags and, knockoff t-shirts and stuff like that. The second COVID came in, that was the first place I saw selling face masks on the side of the road.
Right.
They pivoted.
Genius.
They saw an opportunity and people were buying 10. Now, they weren't the best things in the world. I think they were basically half a swimsuit bra kind of thing. So they weren't, I don't think they really helped you at all, but they were buying them. And I was seeing them, people pulling 10 off at a time and people buying them. People see opportunity. For you to understand risk is to understand you first need to limber up. Try the risky stuff where there's no risk. Try the food, try the radio station, try a new book, try that kind of stuff to get your muscle memory in your head going, all right, we're trying things differently.
Talking with Steve Sims today, you're like the biggest onion in the world. The more you peel back, the more there is to you, which I absolutely love. I could spend 3 hours talking to you here. When you talk about timing and opportunity, okay, so when I bought I'm a car guy. I've got a garage full of cars, and that's just what I do. I mean, I golf and I boat, but cars are my thing. And the very first car that I bought was a 911. It was a 911 Porsche. And I'll never forget this because I had no business walking into this dealership at the level of success I had at the time and the money that I made at the time. But I walked in there and I said, I've got this goal where I'm going to buy this business out and it's going to take me 7 years. And at the end of that 7th year, I'm going to come in here and buy this car. So I actually got the brochure on year 1, took it home. And I looked at it, kept it in my nightstand, whatever. Year 2, I walked back in, I got another brochure, and the car dealer guys were like, who's this knucklehead who keeps coming in here 2 years in a row? He's going to buy a car 5 years from now? Yeah, right. The 3rd year, I got another brochure. The 4th year, I got another one, kept it, looked at it, put it in my head, attracted myself to it, right? By the 5th year, those salespeople were like, you know what? We're starting to believe you're actually going to do this. And sure enough, 2 years later, I walked in there and ordered that car, and they couldn't believe it. I mean, the guys were still there. They just couldn't believe that someone could go 7 years with a plan like that in their mind. And I said, listen, you plan for retirement for 30 years, you plan to buy a house for 5 or 10 years. What's wrong with doing this? So I think timing and opportunity is just so important. And again, to stretch what you think you want. I mean, I should have been in a Chevy dealership, not a Porsche dealership at the time, right? But it was just one of those things where I wanted to really push myself and see where I could go. And now, again, I've got, I've been lucky. I've got a garage full, and I just love every one of them. So you talk about the piece on time and how absolutely important that is. About 15, 20 years ago, we were at a very small Christmas party when my company was just opening. It was struggling just to stay afloat. It's more like 30 years ago, actually, but I got a clock from one of my staff members. And Steve, it was a clock where you put it on the desk, you plugged it in the wall, you entered your current age, and then you hit go, and it started subtracting your life right in front of you by hours and minutes and seconds. And I'm looking at this thing. They based it on 78 3/4 years or whatever. So I'm watching this thing and I'm going, wow, I just lost another hour of my life, and it's spinning backwards. And I'm looking at this thing, and I leave for a weekend. I'd come back, 72 hours would be missing. I'd be like, holy cow, this is starting to bug me a little bit, But what it did teach me, though, is that, obviously life is short. You always hear people say that, but every minute, every hour, every day, to your point on during the pandemic, they're all so useful and they're all so valuable. And I started talking less to the people I didn't want to talk to. I spent less time with people I didn't want to spend time with. My meetings were shorter. I mean, I got all these efficiencies. I'm not saying that we should all go out and buy a life clock. In fact, I started calling it the death clock after a while.
Yeah.
But I ended up grabbing that thing, smashed it into pieces, and throwing it in the dumpster because I was tired of it. But you make a really good point about the one thing that the richest people in the world all wish they had more of, and that's time. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Anytime you speak to anyone that's got any kind of profile, success, impact, when you have a conversation with them, they don't care about what you ate last night. They don't care about what you're watching on Netflix. They're asking what you're working on and what impact is that going to create. And then the next question is, why are you the best person to create that? And if you're not, why don't you vision the idea, but then find people to come in that can actually go through with it and actually complete on the project? So I've had conversations with very powerful people where it's like I've been grilled, because they don't have any water cooler shit. They don't want to hear a joke. They want to know about what's going on. How's that going to work? Why is that going to work? Why you are the person that's best to bring it to the market? And they want to get involved in that. They want to understand that they know they've only got a certain amount of hours left. And it's a gift. We don't know if we've got this afternoon. I don't want to be a carp, but we have no idea.
Right.
But we know what we can do today. And I'm hoping in this conversation that we've had with you today, there's been one person there that's gone, do you know, shit, I'm not going to accept. I'm going to try these low risks. I'm going to try training my brain to look for opportunity. I'm going to do things differently because of those two guys that rattled on this morning. Now, if we can change 1, 2, 3, then we've utilized the time wisely. But that's the focus. Every person that's got any kind of profile, status, money, they focus on the impact they can create in the time they've got left.
And when you talk about entrepreneurship, and I think this is a good segue into that. So I hear people tell me all the time, oh, you're lucky you're one of those entrepreneurs. Okay. You're lucky you were like born an entrepreneur. And so I always look back at them and say, okay, here's a crayon and a piece of paper. Can you draw entrepreneur for me? Okay. Like, can you draw that as if it's a thing? Because it isn't a thing, Steve. You and I both know it's a series of characteristics, right? It's a grouping of characteristics that are all driven by a vision, right?
Yep.
And that's the thing about Elon Musk. You know, what I learned from Elon Musk is that he sees things that other people don't see. He uses the visual side of his brain, and where most people use the reactionary side of the brain. You know, we react to a stimulus. He creates his own stimulus by looking and seeing and visualizing these opportunities and these big things. So when I think about entrepreneurship, I think, okay, if I can draw what I want my picture to look like, I call it like my comfort, peace, and freedom moment in the book. Okay. If I can draw that nirvana in a very clear way, if I can draw that car, that house, my pet, my hobby, my sport, my health, my give back moment, my faith, my whatever, my generosity, if I can draw those things and put them in a picture, I can take one of many paths in order to get there. But I got to have a why, right? I have to have a why. So when I think of the characteristics, and we talk about them in the book, you know, persistence, resilience, faith, you know, initiative, courage, all those things. Everybody has those characteristics in themselves, I believe. I didn't go to college. I have no letters after my name. You know, I've been called an involuntary life coach around my office, but I love it. But the thing is what I always start with is, why are you doing whatever the hell it is you think you want to do? Why are you doing it? Like, what's the reason? Because without a reason, you're just hoping and wishing and dreaming, right? So what do you tell people when you talk about, you know, what entrepreneurship means to you? Because it's such a vague term. And how do you get people off the couch to say, okay, well, now that's where I'm going?
I think all entrepreneurs are aggravated and pissed off. I think something happens in their life that doesn't work for them. They can't understand. They can't fathom. They see a different route and makes no sense to them. And then they become the solution to their own problem. You know, there's the classic story of Elon Musk couldn't understand why it took 5 days to transfer money from one US bank account to another US bank account where there was physically no money being moved. And it was nothing more than just an email technically of transferring some digits from one account to another. But it took 5 days. Now we know the reason why, because the bank's got to play with it for 5 days. But he invented PayPal. He found a way for me to be able to go, yeah, I'll pay you now. Don't PayPal, you've got it. So I think we're all aggravated, and that aggravation then leads to impact. So it's that impact and momentum that starts from the aggravation. And then the beauty of entrepreneurism is the freedom that it gives you to be and who you want to be. So you can now turn around and go, I really like that. I want to do more of that. So it's that kind of environment which allows us to be free to be and do what we want to be. But it all stems from aggravation. If anyone listening to this, and they're not, but if anyone was listening to this show that was happy with their life, was settled, was comfortable, they're listening to the wrong show. Everyone that's listening to this show is pissed off. They want an advantage. They want to hear something special. They want to learn how to change it. That's what they're after.
And again, talking about the book, Steve Sims and Go for Stupid, I'm going to show it one more time. People always ask me this question, so I'll throw this at you. Who's the reader of this book?
Agitated people. People that are tired of that circle laughing at them and not supporting them. People that are tired of their bank account and they want more. Tired of the clients that they've been getting rather than the clients they want. Tired of the brand that they've got, the marketing that they do. Aggravated people that have just gone, all right, enough's enough. It's my turn. And that's who's going to read the book.
Beautiful. So what are you up to these days?
Teaching, training, coaching. I literally have just, the Audible version came out today, so that was quite exciting. But I seem to be absolutely slammed with speaking gigs at the moment. I'm in Seattle in 2 days' time. Then I go to Dallas. Just got picked up to speak in Venice, Italy. So wow. I do a lot of international training, teaching, and coaching. And to be honest with you, I like that because I want to get people to change. You know, for years I spent billionaires' money. Now I want to put you in a position to be able to do what you want to do. And that's Perfect. The focus I got.
So we talk about comfort, peace, and freedom a lot. Yeah, I mentioned that earlier. And I ask everybody those three things. So I know you're a motorcycle guy, and, yep. and my best friend is a huge motorcycle guy. He drove his motorcycle from the northwest corner of Washington State to the tip of Key West with a group of guys. And they had a semi truck in the front and one in the back with all their clothes and all the car parts and all the food and extra fuel and everything else. And they all went in mass, and he just absolutely loved it. So where do you, when someone says, when you say, okay, I'm going to go seek out some comfort, where are you going?
Actually, when I finish this podcast, I've got to jump in the truck because I'm going to a racetrack. I like to release my brain and focus on the racetrack. And when you're hurtling a motorcycle around 160 miles an hour on one knee, you can only be focusing on that moment, which means that all the other baggage in your head, your life just dissipates and you become lighter. So my way of relaxing is to engage myself in something I can solely focus on and only that thing.
That's wonderful. One of the cars that I have, I take to a track and I love to just zip it around and act like I'm an actual NASCAR driver, which I wanted to be when I was a little kid. So I'm living that dream too. Where do you find the most peace, the most quiet? Like where are you at when you're at your most peaceful?
I've got a great garden up here in the hills, and I love to just sit here, play with the dogs and just chat with my wife, maybe barbecue something. I've lived vicariously for many, many years through other people's wishes and dreams. Sure. So now I just love to sit here and maybe tinker around on a motorcycle. I find that I tinker around on it so much that I usually bugger it up and my mechanic has to come and fix my shit. So I'm not very good. I wouldn't trust me with fixing anything. But I just like to do that and just have solitaire moments with like true friends, true people, and true conversations.
And then finally, the freedom piece. Where do you feel like you are the most free? And that doesn't have to be freedom like, freedom being a citizen of the United States, but like, where are you just the most let loose?
I think I'm free in my mind. I think the sense of freedom is to be able to focus and think and dream of the stuff that you want to do or be. The downside with not having freedom is when you wake up in the morning, you're worried about the mortgage, you're worried about the business, you're worried about your marketing ROI, you're worried about the Facebook ads. So freedom is when you're not worrying about that. You wake up in the morning, you go, what should I do today? That's freedom. And that's where I like to be. As entrepreneurs, We are always creating problems that we try to find a solution, and we find those challenges. But I think the freedom needs to be able to pick the time and attention to the things that you want to give it to.
Awesome. Steve Sims, author of Go for Stupid. And he's done so many awesome things with his life. And I hope you enjoyed our little bit today. And again, as Steve said, I hope it moves you to do something, get up and go make something happen for yourself. Steve, thanks a lot. I really, really appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me. Bye.